The screen in front of you, the room you're sitting in, is the physical world you're seeing the true, raw reality of the universe? Or are you looking at a filtered projection, constructed entirely by your own brain? In 1781, a Prussian philosopher named Immanuel Kant published a dense 856-page book that attempted to answer this exact question. It was called The Critique of Pure Reason. At the time, European thinkers were stuck in a deadlock. Rationalist philosophers built systems on the belief that pure logic could reveal the nature of reality, while empiricists argued that because our physical senses are easily fooled, objective knowledge was likely impossible. Kant broke this stalemate by proposing that we shift our focus from the objects we perceive to the way our minds perceive them. He suggested that the human mind functions as an active architect, creating our experience rather than just recording it. This shift implies that the laws we observe in nature might actually be the rules of our own heads. To figure out what is real, we have to reverse engineer the hidden machinery of human consciousness. Let's test this by looking at how your brain processes raw sensory data. Imagine you're standing outside, looking at a standard physical house. Light hits your eyes, delivering scattered impressions of color, shape, and texture. You recognize that the roof sits above the door. But for that spatial relationship to exist, your mind must already possess a framework of geometry. It requires a canvas to place the door and the roof on so they can relate to one another. Kant identified this faculty as sensibility. Space and time function as internal software templates, mandatory filters that force raw, chaotic data into a coherent, structured image. Without these internal templates operating in the background, your conscious experience would remain an unstructured mess of sensory chaos. Your mind would have no way to separate one physical object from another. Because space and time are the mandatory preconditions for any experience at all, they are properties of our perception, rather than features of the external universe. Once the mind builds an image in space and time, it has to decide what that image means. Kant called this second cognitive faculty understanding. Consider a simple interaction. A heavy bowling ball drops onto a soft pillow, leaving a deep depression in the fabric. Strictly speaking, your eyes only report two isolated facts, the ball and the dent. The mind adds the link between them, automatically interpreting the event as cause and effect. Causality is an internal mental rule, one of 12 categories that our minds use to weave scattered sensory data into a predictable narrative. Causality feels like an unbreakable law of nature because the human mind is programmed to process reality through that specific filter. It is a law of our own cognitive architecture. This suggests that when we study the universal laws of science, we are largely measuring the internal blueprints of our own understanding. These mental filters, space, time, and logical categories, act simultaneously to produce our entire view of the universe. Kant labeled this constructed realm the phenomena. This is the world exactly as we experience it, viewed through the lens of our human templates. He contrasted this with the noumena, the ultimate objective reality as it exists in itself, independent of any human observer. Because every thought or measurement is filtered through our own biology, human consciousness is permanently confined to the inside of this boundary. We cannot step outside our own minds to see reality as it exists without us. While we can model the patterns within our filtered bubble, the absolute nature of reality remains a realm we can think about, but never truly know. For centuries, philosophers tried to build towering metaphysical systems to answer questions like how the universe began or whether time is infinite. They believed they could reason their way to the ultimate truth. Kant demonstrated that when human reason tries to bypass our sensory limits to answer these ultimate questions, it detaches from the evidence. It produces endless, looping speculation that can never be verified. These boundaries forced subsequent researchers in physics and psychology to account for the distorting lens of the observer. We stopped treating human perception as a neutral window and began treating it as a complex instrument with its own specific biases. Recognizing these internal limits provides a foundation for intellectual humility. It requires us to acknowledge that our truth is always a construction shaped by the mandatory templates of our own minds. The most significant journey of discovery is not exploring the distant universe, but mapping the boundaries of the mind that perceives it.